What's going on, guys? The Whiskey Saint back on another Wednesday. And we're going to just chat a little bit this one. No whiskey drinking, which is a change for me, no blinds. We're just going to actually talk about my top 10 whiskeys of the year so far. I know it's pretty much the end of the year now, so it's probably going to be my top 10 for the rest of the year. We only got about 2 weeks left to see if something knocks off one of the bottles that, we'll be talking about shortly. But there is a chance, there's a couple things in the works coming out that I've heard. So we shall see. But we're going to dive in, guys. Keep it fun, keep it interesting. Talk about a few of these bottles and why I like them so much. All right. If you're new to our channel, hit that like and subscribe. We're going to kick this off. Cheers. And welcome back. Welcome back. And we're going to try to keep this a little brief. I know it's 10 different whiskeys we got to go through, but, not trying to keep you guys here for like 15, 20 minutes or anything like that. So stick with me. We're going to talk through a couple of these whiskeys, just a couple caveats. I know Jeff put his video out maybe a week. I think it was last week. He actually put his top 10 out. But our main thing with this, we do incorporate single barrels. I know a lot of channels aren't really, putting single barrels in their top 10 just for the fact that everybody can't get them. But, top whiskeys or top 10 whiskeys of the year, it's literally that, right? It's the top 10 whiskeys that I've had. The only small caveat on top of that, outside of single barrels, is that we had to purchase or just own the bottle ourselves. Right. So we're not including any samples that we got from anybody like that unless we have that bottle. So outside of that, everything is up. It's free game. So if, craft distillery's putting out a banger bottle, then maybe it's on here. Some heritage stuff, maybe it's on here. But, we kind of want to just to include everything that we had the chance to taste and own and, see how it all stacks up regardless of how easy or how hard it may be to attain for somebody. All right. So with no further ado, we're going to dive in and just to kind of put it in perspective, like you guys seen me, Kelsey, Jeff, score a bunch of bottles. And like when things get into those high 80s, low 90s, that's typically where, our top whiskeys of the year kind of fall. Right. So my cutoff, granted, there's a couple bottles that were probably just under this, but my cutoff for top 10 was an 88. There's a few bottles that were duplicate score, some from the same distilleries, which, I'll just highlight one of them. But 88 being my my lowest out of my top 10. So we're going to start with number 10. We're going to work our way all the way up to number 1 and let you guys know what, my favorite whiskey of the year so far is. But starting with number 10, coming in at a 88 is a brand new bottle, actually. And I've never had anything from this distillery prior to this year. And I know a few people out there has definitely had some stuff from Old Dominic, Hewlin Station. I know we put a single barrel out recently, sold out, which grateful to you guys for doing that. But this was the cash strength, or is the cash strength offering that Old Dominic is doing, and it's their own distillate, 52% corn, 44% rye, 4 malted barley. This thing's coming in at 121 proof at 6 years. This stuff is killer, and I'm really, really excited to see where they're at in the next couple of years, see if they continue to age, if they get to that 7, 8, 9-year marker in terms of age statement, man, because I think at 6 years right now, that stuff is pretty special. So it's just like, it literally can't wait to see where they go. Even at, the age statement that it is right now, I still think it's really, really good. But I would be curious to see what a couple more years potentially do to that whiskey. If it makes it better, if it doesn't, then hey, we already know at 6 years we got a good product, right? But that was a surprise because I've never had anything from them prior to that trip going down there for that single barrel pick that we did. So that was exciting. But moving it along to number 9, guys. This is a Single barrel, Middle West Spirits, dark pumpernickel rye. This one in particular was my favorite of, I believe, the three that I tried this year. This was actually highlighted in Jeffrey's video as well. This is coming from Two Bros, One Bottle. I think I said that right? Yeah, Two Bros, One Bottle. I always kind of want to say like two bottles, one bro, and mix it up a bit. But Middle West Spirits, dark pumpernickel rye, 125.5 proof. This one, I believe, was a 5-year. It was barreled in May of 2019. It released this year. But if you guys haven't had anything out on Middle West, I know they're starting to catch on now. I got on a little late, man. Like, this is another distillery that I've never had anything from prior to this year, and was very, very pleasantly surprised with every single barrel of the dark pumpernickel rye that I've had so far, along with some of their other stuff that they're putting out. But that came in at an 88 as well, guys. So moving it along past that 88, hitting 89, we're looking at my number 7, which is another single barrel from I guess it's not really a distillery. It's MGP, but from a company called Dark Arts, or a brand called Dark Arts, which I've never had any of their stuff. Granted, I've had plenty of MGP, know the profile, but this is finished, coming from Barrels for Hope. This is the 7-year white port, straight bourbon whiskey finished in white port wine casks, 113.46 proof. And this was really, really good. This surprised me because they came out with this in the Oloroso Sherry. And I've always been a sherry guy. You know, I love sherry flavored whiskey, or sherry finished whiskey, not flavored. Sherry finished whiskey. And this white port kind of just hit me in a nicer way. Kind of think of it as like a Welch's white grape in a sense. It just had like that nice tart, full, like tanginess with like some nice fruit notes up front, which was really, really good. But moving it along, guys, to my number 7, it's another single barrel. This is actually a local one to me. This is Rare Character, but what they did is, this is from Yankee Spirits, so my local store that I get pretty much all my whiskey from. But what they did is finish this in a Barbados rum cask, which we all know for the most part, pretty much everything from Barbados in terms of rum is Foursquare. So this was some 6-year, 9-month MGP finished in a Foursquare barrel. And you can see this bottle's pretty darn low. And I don't think I shared much of it. I sent a couple samples off, and when I first got it, I just kept diving in. But this one came in at a 89, guys, and this is number 7. Moving it along to number 6, coming in at a 89 as well, guys. Distillery that hits home to me. Literally, it's like right in my backyard. It's about 5 minutes down the road. What we're talking about is Carper and Cask. You know, I kind of put these guys on their limelight probably the past like year or so. Like, you know, didn't really know too much about them. I knew they were here, had a few bottles from them, but they started putting out some really, really, really killer stuff last year. And I just been kind of like diving down that rabbit hole, and they're not missing, man. You got a guy, Steven over there, Corrigan, just doing some like great blend-ins. The single barrel programs lights out, man. Like, they got some really, really good whiskey in the works, some stuff that's already out, upcoming. Like, they're just hitting on all cylinders, man. So I'm pretty excited to see where, you know, they're at in the next year or two, because it just seems like this stuff just is getting older and older, and just the profiles are just where I want them to be in terms of MGP, man. Like, they're doing some good stuff over there. But yeah, this was a 9-year small batch release. This was the second small batch, I believe, they released. I know they did an 8-year last year. Florida aged MGP. And if you guys had Florida aged MGP from Carper and Cask, you know that profile is like pretty nuts. It hits differently, man. And it's just like berry bombs, nice oak, like everything about it I love. But this was a killer bottle. I think they retailed for like $89, $80, somewhere around there, like relatively cheap for what it is. And they still sit on the shelves. Well, one store in particular still has a couple sitting on the shelves, which is kind of nuts. But yeah, coming in at number 6, guys, at a whopping score of 89. 9-year copper and cask, small batch, banger. And look at that color though, like dark. Moving it along to number 5. This one's a little controversial. Tried sharing this whiskey with a few people, kind of hit or miss with them, but for me, it just hits in the right spots. What we're talking about, guys, is the Old Stubborn Batch 2 pick. This one was interesting. So it's a premium hand marriage of 10, 11, and 12-year-old pot still straight bourbon. I know this rubbed Jeffrey the wrong way when we tried this in Tennessee. Like, he does not like pot stilled bourbons and pulls out certain notes that kind of rub him the wrong way. But for me, I enjoy it, and that's why it's in my top 10. This came in at a 90 for me, which says a lot. Like, there's just tons of flavor. Like, maybe there's a pot still note, but I don't know what that pot still note is to him. I just know that I like this whiskey, and I'm curious to see if this makes our top 16 to see how it does in a blind, because like when you're tasting it and knowing what it is, maybe that plays into your head a little bit and mindset on what you're scoring it. But it's always fun putting stuff like this in blinds just to really see how it fares against the competition. But moving it along, guys. So top five. This made the cut. So going into number 4 is another bottle of copper and cask, guys. And this one, ironically, is younger. This is a 7-year local pick, another store close to me, maybe about 15 minutes away. And it's Florida aged MGP again. Like, the Florida stuff is just kind of killer, man. Like, this right here, and it's not as dark, right? You can see the difference. Where's the other one? So, like, this is definitely darker. This is the 9-year versus the 7-year, but this 7-year just hits, man. Like, oh man, this one scored a 91 for me, guys. 91, and it's only 7 years old. And this pick, I think, was like $50. It was like $49.99 or $55.99, like something crazy. Like, the value in copper and cask right now with some of their higher age statements, like their price points are just lovely. So you can get some really good whiskey at a phenomenal price point. Moving along, guys, to the top 3. And there hasn't been a rye. Actually, no, there has been one rye. That dark pumpernickel was a rye. But moving along to a top 3, I believe this was in Jeffrey's list as well, or maybe he talked about it. But the 11-year MGP ryes that came out this year have been insanely good, man. There's so many different companies featuring some of that stock. But this right here was a single barrel pick from Traverse City, 10 years, 11 months, coming in at 120.6 proof, and this thing was killer. When I first had this was my number 1 rye of the year when I first tried it. Blew me away. As you can see, I do not have much left, so hanging on to this for dear life for our end of the year tournament, because I know this is going to make it. But don't have much, so I can't touch it. It's going to sit back, and we're going to see how this one fares. But I think this is probably going to make a top 5 appearance in our tournament. But Traverse City, man, they've been doing some really good stuff lately, and their price points have been really good. This bottle, I believe, was only about $110. I have a couple 7-year picks that are high proof, and those were only like $39.99, which is kind of crazy. So pretty nuts, man. Look out for Traverse City. Some of those 7, 8, 9-year-old picks could be pretty good. But we are on the top 2, guys. We have a bourbon and a rye left. Which one is number 1? I know a few of you guys probably been sick with me hearing me talk about a couple different bottles pretty much all year, and that's these 2 that we're going to talk about right now. And we're going to keep it short. I know the video's been a little long, but number 2 is another single barrel coming from NBC. Barrels for Hope did a ridiculous job finding this single barrel. Oh man, barrel number 3203, 7-year, 127.2 proof, and this thing is absolutely ridiculous. My favorite bourbon of the year, and I know this was subscription based, but 7-year picks, I believe this year, were only about I think $100, right? So, or maybe even $110. But that's what that bottle would have cost. And that thing outshined every bourbon that I've had so far. And I've had a good amount of bourbons this year, as well with Rise, right? But this thing took the cake, shared this. As you can see, there's not much in it, but been wanting everybody to try it that I know locally. And I'll keep the rest of this for the tournament and see how much I have left after. But I do have a backup thanks to the end of the year charity event that they did. Had a buddy of mine put in I want to say it was like a silent auction they did to acquire another bottle. So I can kind of drink this and not feel too bad because I do got one more sitting. And that one's probably going to stay sealed for a very long time. But cheers to you guys over at Barrels of Hope. This was a killer pick. Moving it along to my number one, guys. And that was a bourbon. My number one whiskey of the year so far is a rye. And I don't know, God, I'm trying to think the last like 3 years or so that I've did this, if I've had a rye as my number one. I don't think I've have. I think it's always been bourbon. But we talked about it briefly. MGP and their 11-year-old stuff this year has just been stellar. This is another local pick. New England Barrel Company over here in New England put out an 11.5-year-old MGP rye that is just silly good. Like, I can sit here and talk about this forever. I know a lot of you guys aren't going to have the chance to taste it. Those who were at Jason's event, this bottle was there. So hopefully you had a chance to taste it. I know I've shared a lot of it with people. This is actually my second bottle, thanks to Lance, local to me, gave me the rest of his, which was pretty much up here. So you can see I'm already sharing that, as well as the one that I already finished, right, and shared. But like, this is a special bottle that I don't mind sharing, but just got to make sure I do it after the tournament. Granted, it's plenty in here for the tournament. But yeah, my number one whiskey of the year, guys. This came in at a 90. So we're going to actually touch base because I left a couple scores out. Traverse City scored a 92, which was third place. The NBC Barrels for Hope scored a 93. This actually scored a 93. Then I went back not realizing that I had scored it like a few days later, and it scored a 95. So I'm going to take the average and put it at like a 94. So that's why this is number one over the Barrels for Hope, even though technically on paper, if I show you my spreadsheet, they're both 93. But on a later date, not knowing that I did score it, it did score a 95. So kind of average two. But I think, honestly, if I put them against each other, like, actually, I don't know if it would beat it every time. I think they'll kind of go like back and forth. But this is a special pour, and I do not mind having it as number one. But that's it, guys. My top 10. I know we got a couple weeks left into the end of the year. Does something knock one of those off the list? Probably not, but we shall see. If you guys been sticking with me so far, I know it's been a long video, but wanted to get through that top 10 with you guys. Appreciate you all. Tune in a little later today. Got Trev on the channel, week 4 of the Advent Challenge. I'm a couple points off of first place. Did I do well enough to overtake it? We're going to see. Or do the Vascos, repeat and kick our butts again? Stay tuned. Wednesday, or today, should I say, 8 p.m. Eastern. Hello again, whiskey friends. Should be a good time. Cheers, guys.
Jeff, just be friends with me. But you have the